Welcome back to MANO. My name is Carmen Monge and this channel is MANO Beyond Cancer. This is a space dedicated to all cancer survivors from around the world. In here, we share our experiences and we see the person, not the illness.
So, hi everyone. Today we are with Karl Smith-Byrne. He's going to tell us a little bit about him. So nice to see you, and thank you for being here. So the first question is, who are you? What are you passionate about right now? And what is your favorite food?
Well, I'm Carl. I'm a researcher. So I work in cancer research at the University of Oxford, and I do a lot of research into the causes of cancer. And I think that's something I'm super passionate about. What's my favorite food? Oh, maybe sushi. I'm a really big fan of fish in general.
So the second question was, how was to have cancer in the UK?
So I was living in France at the time when I got sick, working at the United Nations, and so I initially got diagnosed there, and everyone who I was involved with was incredibly kind and really very capable. And then I moved back to the UK to get my treatment, and I think in general it was very good. I mean, like we have a kind of a socialized medicine system here. And so maybe things don't move quite as quickly as they might do in other settings where you've got private healthcare, but I never really felt like I was receiving bad treatment.
Do you know many cancer survivors, and how can you describe them in one word?
So it's interesting because I work in cancer. Obviously, there is an appropriate amount of engagement that I do with my researcher hat on with, cancer patients in the research that I do. So I do a lot of work in prostate cancer, for example, and we meet quite frequently with prostate cancer support groups in Oxford. Generally, prostate cancer happens in men who are much older than I am. My impression from them is generally actually mostly that they're incredibly focused on their family members. They're focused on their sons who might be in their 20s or 30s or 40s, and their reflection is, I've survived this, or I'm in treatment and it's going sufficiently well that I'm at this support group. I want to understand the causes and I want to understand how there could be a change in the future. And I think that there's something quite inspiring about that because it's people who are currently undergoing treatment or have been through an experience, and their first thought is for the next generation, not necessarily for themselves. And that's quite beautiful. And then I meet a lot of people who are sort of generally my age, or maybe like a little bit younger, a little bit older, sort of in their 20s, 30s, 40s. And you meet some people who you just don't quite understand how they've gone through what they've gone through.
What is a side effect that actually you like about having cancer or about the treatment?
I think that experiencing adversity can generally be a good prompt for personal growth. And it's not that necessarily I'm glad that I've gone through the, I guess maybe a side effect of having gone through the journey is maybe that it allows you to live your life with more optimism and compassion than maybe you had the bandwidth to do before you experienced that journey.
What is the stupidest or weirdest thing someone have ever told you about having cancer?
I remember I had this meeting with people at, actually it's where I first met you, I believe, at the Weekend Academy. I think a bunch of us after the day's events were sat around and everyone was telling me, well, we were all telling each other about our stories. We were sort of engaging about the journeys we'd gone on. What I realized in that moment is that actually when you're in a group of people, all of whom who have had cancer, and everyone's gone through that journey, and it it started to feel a bit absurd because it was a little bit like we were going around in a circle saying, "Oh, I've had a terrible experience. No, 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 no. Let me tell you about my experience. It was so much worse." And we all kind of went around in a circle, and it was a little bit morbid, but it was somehow so satisfying and cathartic, right? To be in a situation where nobody is scared to hear how bad your story was because everyone has had a terrible story. And so you end up like just doubled over, like belly laughing about like how absurd it is that you thought your experience was like, you uniquely bad when everyone else has had some other flavor of just terror. Um, and so it's not really them telling me about, it's not really them telling me something silly, but there was a beautiful silliness in that moment where it was a little bit like we were all teenagers sat around a campfire trying to brag about the how many people we had kissed or something like that. it's difficult to find that catharsis. Like if you're going through cancer, it can feel like there's only one way to engage with the subject. And there are so many. And even when you're describing terrible things, it can still be very funny if it's in the right circumstance.
And like the surprise question, I wanted to know what would you like to see in cancer research, like in the following years? Like, what do you think we still have to improve in cancer research?
I think that effective cancer treatments can be life-saving, but surviving cancer can be profoundly life-limiting. You know, I don't think anyone who's gone through cancer would say that even if their treatment was effective, they wouldn't prefer to have those organs, to not to not have had to go through that experience, to not have had those costs. I mean, I'm very lucky. I was getting treated in a country where you don't incur costs. And that's not true for most people, as far as I'm aware. So I think for me, the thing we need to do is we need to figure out what are the next generation of therapeutic, either pharmaceutical or lifestyle diet that we can implement so that fewer people go through the things that we went through. That's probably the short and the end of it. And I think patient advocacy is so effective, but we need patient advocacy for the next generation. And I think there's things we can do in cancer research, but also things we can do in the advocacy space.
Tell me in one word of you that you were like this before having cancer and you are still like this.
I guess optimistic, maybe. I'm definitely more optimistic than I was before I got the cancer, and I definitely wasn't always optimistic while I was getting treatment. Um, but yeah, maybe optimistic. That's a very challenging question. But I think it's interesting not to dwell too much on it, I do think that cancer is a profoundly life-altering and perspective-altering process to go through. So if you ask me for one word now or one word before, I think I probably would have had an easier time about it. I do feel like we are profoundly changed as we go through. And so finding a unifying thread, I think, is that's an interesting that's something to spend the evening thinking about.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much for the questions. It's really been a joyful experience.
Thank you for watching all the video. Bye bye.